Welcome to the Probate Realtor Show, your one source for selling and buying real estate through trust and probate. Hear directly from the best attorneys and trusted advisors on how executors and administrators navigate the probate process in and out of court. Being a personal representative or successor trustee can be a daunting task, and often beneficiaries don't have a clear plan. Let us help you make the right decision for your clients, your family, and your legacy. And now, here's your host, the probate realtor himself, Matias Baker Masucci.
Welcome, everybody, to another very exciting episode of our show. Today, we are talking to Davis Zellmer. Davis, welcome to the show. Davis is from the law offices of Davis R. Zellmer. He's located in Los Alamitos, and he specializes in estate planning, trust administration, and probate. Davis, it's a pleasure to have you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And I actually want to update you. My law firm changed recently, and it's now Zellmer Estate Planning. But
okay.
Either way, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to speaking with you about it. I think it's very important to inform people about this issue. And so thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's delve right into it, and then we'll talk a little bit about you and your journey. So, Davis, one of the questions that people I want to kind of communicate to the audience is, why is it important to avoid probate?
You know, the biggest importance to avoid probate is just to not have to go through the judicial procedure of probate. Mm-hmm. Probate is not only costly to both the beneficiary and the estate, but it's also extremely time consuming. Okay. Here in LA and Orange County, probates are lasting anywhere from a year and a half to sometimes 2 years now, at a bare minimum. On top of that, the amount of cost that it takes to go through probate, including attorney's fees, executor fees, and court fees, you're talking about wasting tens of thousands of dollars in an estate that otherwise could be administered for a few $1,000s. Right. So your savings in doing trust administration rather than probate is going to be, 10 times savings. So that is probably the primary reason. The other reason is trust administration continues to be private in most sense. The only people getting notice or record notice are generally going to be the beneficiaries and sometimes the creditors, but we're not going through a public auction block like we are in probate. Everybody will start getting spam calls from advance companies to realtors to whatever else it might be, and it becomes a little bit intrusive in some sense for individuals. Plus, the entire dollar amount is on the court record, so everybody knows how much is in the pot, how much you're inheriting, and if anybody wants to delve into your privacy, they can, because it's no longer private.
There is a lot of truth to that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So one of the things that people may be reluctant, so the question is, how do we avoid probate? It's important to avoid it, and we avoid it through estate planning. But one of the things that, I think there is a lot of misconceptions is, once you do estate planning, you can lose control of your assets because you're setting up a trust, you're doing these things. So how do you ensure, first of all, I guess you educate your client to explain them how these vehicles work. And second, how do you make sure that the people who come to you to avoid probate by doing estate planning, they feel like they have full control over their assets while they're alive?
Yeah, so my clients come to me and they ask, well, if I put this into the trust, am I going to lose control over the assets because now this trust owns my asset? And I tell them, you know what, the short answer is no. 90% of the clients come into an estate planning attorney are coming for a revocable living trust, which is 100% revocable and amendable by the settlers who create that trust. They have the opportunity to buy, sell, transfer property, do whatever they want, just as if they owned it in their personal name. Now, that is not to say that all trusts are set up that way. In advanced planning, if you have clients that have a significant amount of money, there is advanced planning mechanisms where you are creating irrevocable trusts, which does set some limitations on what you can and can't do with the property. However, that is in a very rare situation. The estate tax exemption amount is a little over $12 million right now. So if you're under 12 million, and collectively, if you're married, you can double that value. A simple estate plan could still be an option for you. There is a misconception about a trust, and I think when people if they go to their attorney and they just start talking about it, they will understand that, hey, this really isn't going to affect my flexibility on what I can do with my assets. And they'll look at see that there's far more pros than cons in getting yourself an estate plan.
That makes total sense. You know what? Something you said. So I've talked about this with many attorneys. One of the things you mentioned in your answer about why to avoid probate, it just kind of dawned on me, is the fact that, you know, it's a true thing. It's a public process, and that's what people talk about a lot. They said, you know, everything is in et cetera, and sometimes the court gets to decide. If you don't decide for yourself, there's laws in that regard. One of the things you said, though, that stuck with me, it's spam. It's true. You got a lot of spam. If anybody's filed the probate, you got a lot of spam. So I am pretty sure I'm going to title this episode, Avoid Spam, Do an Estate Plan. So I'm just like, it was spot on. It is absolutely right, because it's a public process. And because there are companies out there who sell those information. I'm a realtor. They sell them to realtors. They sell them to anybody. The inheritance advance companies, exactly what you're talking about. You can count on it that once you file a probate, everybody's going to reach out to you and he's going to want a piece of the action. So this is a very good reason. Yeah. We all hate spam so much. It's a very good reason.
And it's not to knock the companies that are doing that. I think it's a marketing strategy and there's nothing wrong with that. However, most people want to avoid it.
Yeah,
you know,
I understand.
And so while I appreciate what, you know, those companies do serve a purpose, nobody wants everybody gets mail and they see 90% of it is junk mail and it goes straight to the trash anyway. Well, do you want nine more phone calls a day, or do you want just your normal 10, right?
Yeah.
Let's stick to the regular friends calling you, not somebody you don't know.
Exactly. That makes total sense. Now, let's talk about litigation. Okay, because every estate plan is not, you know, they're not foolproof. We see it all the time. You know, their trusts are contested, wills are contested, et cetera, et cetera. Over the years, how have you developed specific techniques, or there are things that have raised flags in your practice where you're thinking, okay, you know, we have to do certain things to make sure that it's not bulletproof, it cannot be avoided. You know, people are people, but there are some things some checks and balances you can put along the way to make it a little bit harder for people to litigate. So we have the no contest clause, for example, right? Can you talk to me? First of all, can you tell our audience what that is? And then can we talk a little bit about other strategies that you may use in your estate plan to avoid litigation?
Yeah, so avoiding litigation primarily starts at the very beginning. You got to understand that when you are creating an estate plan for yourself, who are you giving your assets to? Do those people get along? Who are you putting in charge? Who are you delegating to be the successor trustee? Or, you know, can you see a conflict arising from the very beginning? And I always want my clients to understand that while everything is perfect right now, the writing's on the wall. Okay. Right. We know siblings don't get along with each other, even though they all talk to mom and dad and everything's fine there. If the siblings butt heads, you know, there could be a problem. Okay. So you mentioned no contest provision. That's a very good provision that should be in absolutely every estate plan. It should be on every amendment that you create. It should even be in the will, the pour-over will that you receive with your estate plan. A no contest provision, basically, I like to put it like this. It creates the opportunity for the trustee or the executor to have a sword and a shield, okay? The sword is to fight away the people that are trying to change the provisions of the trust or say that mom or dad wanted it a different way. But it's also a shield to protect them from having to also pay for this person coming after. I also put it like this: a no contest provision, if it's written the correct way, it's a gambling provision. If the person ends up contesting the trust, they are putting their chips on red. Well, if they're wrong and they find that there was no good cause for them to bring this litigation, then it goes on black, and guess what? They can be relieved of their entire inheritance.
Right.
Okay. So that's very good. Downside with the no contest provision: if you are leaving somebody completely out, what is there to contest? Right. They still will have the perception that, well, I'm going to sue anyway because I have nothing to lose anyway. So sometimes if you know somebody is going to contest, I would recommend giving them a nominal share to say, hey, how about $10,000? And if you don't contest, you get the 10. If you do, you don't get it at all.
Right.
So it just depends, and it'll basically depend on the individual's net worth, things like that, how much they can afford to do that. But a no contest provision absolutely should be in every estate plan. As I kind of mentioned before, I tell my clients to avoid litigation, you really got to think about who you're dealing with and who's going to be in charge at the end of the day. If you absolutely know that your children do not get along and they're going to fight this out and litigate this, sometimes I recommend getting a third-party administrator, a fiduciary, a trustee from a bank or an institution to be the person in charge of the trust. That way, the emotions of the history get taken out of the equation, and this person does a job. They perform a job at the discretion of what the trust says. In those scenarios, when I have helped with administrations where a third-party trustee or a fiduciary is dealing with combative beneficiaries, most of the time litigation has been avoided because they're a neutral third party. So that's always something to consider. Another thing I consider would be to, if you have co-trustees, make sure you have some sort of tie break if it's an even number. This is one that I don't think a lot of people think about. I have been in situations where trustees just don't agree with each other, and they want to administer it in two different ways, and there's nobody to suggest. So I've been in litigation with trustees going to a court now and doing a petition for instructions as to what is the best way to administer the estate, option A or option B. Well, that's time consuming and unnecessary. So if you have a tiebreaker third party, that can be it. I personally like and recommend to most of my clients have one person do the job. Co-trustees, while it's a good idea in theory, it doesn't always work out that way. So
that makes total sense. And I like the human aspect. It's like, think, who are you dealing with? Who are the people who are going to be there when you're gone? And do they get perfectly along? And I think that advice is very sound advice, both about getting a neutral third party, because sometimes in litigation it gets appointed anyway. So you might as well, get there before. And the other option is, I know you're like, maybe people have two kids. They're like, I don't want to make one person feel left out. Maybe they're going to be co-trustees. Everybody I've spoken to says that that's almost never a good idea. Make sure somebody is in charge, which kind of leads me to the next question, which is trust administration, which is a little bit of a misunderstood concept, because I think estate planning, more and more people are becoming aware of what it is. But what people are not becoming aware is what happens after the death takes place. Like, why? First of all, let's actually define it. What is trust administration?
Yeah, trust administration is the process of taking the individual's revocable living trust. When they pass away, it becomes irrevocable. Now the trustee or successor trustee has the fiduciary responsibility, that's an important term, fiduciary responsibility, to distribute the funds according to the trust terms. Okay. Now, fiduciary responsibility means you cannot be acting in your own self-interest, even if you are, in fact, a beneficiary. You are working in the beneficiary's best interest as a whole, as a group, which isn't necessarily always going to be in line with your personal best interest. And so when choosing a trustee, that's another thing. You want to make sure they are a person of integrity, of honesty. Okay. So trust administration is a process after that where you are reading through the trust and you say, my house is going to my son and daughter, my bank accounts are going to my 2 grandkids. Okay. And well, what do? Do we just sign the title over to them and we're done? No, it's not that simple. There are definitely county forms, state forms, things like that. Still tax forms, Notice of Franchise Tax Board, EDD, Department of Healthcare Services. There are notice to beneficiaries, including a 16061.7 notice that are required for all beneficiaries for a contesting period. Certain creditors are required to be notified. So there is much more to administration than just giving away mom and dad's things. And I always say mom and dad because that's the easiest way to think about this.
Of course.
But there are some intricacies in trust administration that oftentimes go overlooked. I would say one of the biggest ones over the course of my years would be the property tax exclusions that have happened between parent and child. And all of a sudden they get this huge tax bill and they are like, why is this getting reassessed? And they end up paying it through escrow after they sell the property. And they didn't know that had they gone to an attorney, he or she may have known to file a Prop 58 or a Prop 19 election form, okay, to save tens of thousands of dollars sometimes on the property tax reassessment. There's also things to consider, like, hey, is this estate large enough to file estate taxes? We have to know that. What about IRAs and 401ks? If we don't distribute those, if they're beneficiaries in the trust and you don't distribute those within a certain period of time, they might be subject to an excise tax where you're losing 25% of something that could have just been done right away. So yes, the short answer is trust administration is following the trust to get the assets to the beneficiaries, but there is also a lot of responsibilities by the trustee that they need to understand in administering the trust in a way that we are also complying with all the statutory responsibilities that you have for notification, for disclosure, for filing, and a lot of it can be overlooked or unknown to somebody who has never done this before.
That makes total sense. And thank you for communicating. Actually, that's a very good way of communicating the value proposition of why trust administration is important. So to your clients, do you provide the service of administering their trust when the time comes?
I do. So there becomes some conflicts tests that we perform here at my office to make sure there is still no conflicts of interest with the client or the administration process. And it really will depend primarily on whether mom and dad have passed away or if they're just incapacitated or what roles we can do if there begins a contest about the formation of the trust, but you are the one that created the trust. You want to be careful on trust administration in those scenarios sometimes. But ultimately, I would say much of the time when my clients have passed away, I have been the point of contact for their beneficiaries who have called and began the trust administration.
Thank you. That makes total sense. All right, let's talk about you. Our audience wants to connect with the people that they, ultimately reach out to if they need some help. So I would love to talk about your journey. How did you want to do estate planning and probate and trust administration when you were a child, or how did the journey happen?
Oh, my journey has been very very weird, actually. When I went to college at UCLA and I was pre-med, and my goal was to go to medical school. And when I decided against that, after I graduated from college, I decided, you know what, even though I have applied for medical school and things like that, I don't want to go. So I went down, and my wife was the one who actually started law school. And she started law school down in San Diego, and we moved down there. And I was working at a engineering type firm, loving my job. I was making decent money as a young 20-year-old. And after a while, I just said, you know what, I really like what you're doing. To my wife, I want to go do that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I think law school would be fun. And she was just graduated and just took the bar exam, and she said, are you crazy? And I said, you know what, I am, so let's do it. And we agreed that it could be good for our family. But even going into law school, it wasn't necessarily the first thing on my list to do. Wasn't to be a lawyer. I thought a law degree was going to give me a good background into many different areas of professions. So I still didn't know that I was even going to practice law. It was just kind of my next step. Now, as we were going through law school, I really got into, because of my science background and other background, I got into copyright and patent law and really enjoyed learning a lot about that. So when I got out, I thought, that's what I was going to do, actually. And it wasn't until my wife opened up an estate planning practice herself, and I started working with her, that I realized that there's a lot of puzzles here. There's a lot of things here that I really enjoy, as with the personal interaction that I get with clients, and I get to have interfacing with clients, and I'm not just sitting behind a desk looking at a computer screen all day long. And over time, I developed a true love for what she was doing, And so by the time I graduated law school, I just knew, hey, we're gonna get in business together. I'm coming, I'm joining. Well, that just so happens to be the same year that my son was born, and my wife said, I'm giving up my practice. And I said, wait, I'm taking over your practice. You can go work somewhere else if you want. And that's exactly what happened. So my son's 10 now. So I've had this practice for a little over a decade. And I absolutely love what I do. And I continue to learn each and every day about new strategies, new things that are affected in estate planning. You'd be shocked about how many tax codes I read every once in a while, because just one little tax code could affect a plan for maybe one of my clients or 100 of my clients. And so while that might not sound fun to most people, it allows me to kind of think outside the box and how do we fix this problem? Because when there's a will, there's a way. And I've been fortunate enough that we've done some good strategies here and helped clients along the way. And so it's kind of fit into my thinking of strategy and things that I wanted to do in a profession, and I absolutely love it now.
That is wonderful. I love it, and that's great. And the fact that such a beautiful story with your wife spearheading, what ended up being then your passion.
I will mention. Sorry to interrupt. I will mention.
Yeah.
As of 2 years ago, my wife rejoined the firm, and she is now a partner here. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Good.
So we finally accomplished our goal, and we are partners in the law practice now.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And the fact that you can work together speaks volume about your relationship. So that is very important. I end every one of my shows with a question that I call the back of the business card. It's a personal, life question. Pick a number between 1 and 30, and I will ask you that question.
21.
Okay, 21. All right. What is the best Halloween costume you have ever worn?
You know what? I would say it was in high school, and I dressed up as Woody from Toy Story.
Oh, there you go.
And the only reason it was the best costume I ever did is my grandmother and my mother were seamstresses, and they created the outfit to a T. It was by far the most time ever put into a costume. And you put a picture, I have a picture somewhere of me standing next to a picture of Woody, and I could not tell a difference between the two outfits. So I would say that would be my best one.
That is awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Before I let you go, tell us, I'm going to have your contact information in our show notes, but some people may be listening to this podcast and not watching it. So what is the best way to get a hold of you and the firm?
Best way, by phone or email. My phone number, I don't know if I can give it out, but
yeah, absolutely. If you want to.
562-760-1630. Again, 562-760-1630. Or you can look up my website. It's zellmerep.com. That's ZELLMEREP.com. And that stands for Zellmer Estate Planning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm going to bid farewell to everybody. Thanks to all of those people who have joined us, and we'll see you in the next show. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Probate Realtor Show. Find more episodes and interact with us at probaterealtor.la. That's probaterealtor.la. Listen, ask questions, and get results. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Probate Realtor Matias Baker Masucci is a licensed real estate broker in California, DRE number 020547763. Any legal information provided is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing legal advice. Contact an attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal issue or problem. We make no guarantees as to the accuracy of any information. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.